guys, welcome back to the Dear Young Minister podcast. My name is Simi Deleawe, and I am your host. Once again, I would like to say thank you guys so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for your love, for your support. Thank you for letting me know what is helping you, what is encouraging you. And if you could continue to do that, it would help me serve you guys better. It would help me create more content that is actually answering the questions that you are asking and not just, kind of random. And so thank you for your love, your support. Thank you for liking, for sharing, for subscribing. If you have not done so, if you have not subscribed to this YouTube channel, if you have not liked, if you have not liked us on the podcast platforms, if you have not followed us on Instagram at Dear Young Minister Podcast, please do so. It really does help make sure the algorithm is putting this content out there and getting to as many people as possible, because once again, our goal is impact. All right, y'all. Dear Young Minister, think big, start small. Think big, start small. One of the mistakes that I made when I first started ministry was wanting to do everything that I could imagine. I wanted to think big, start big. Okay. I was upset when I had a vision for 100 people and only 10 people showed up. I was extremely upset when I felt like I was not accomplishing the goals that I thought that I should be accomplishing at the time that I should be accomplishing it. And the Holy Spirit had to teach me this lesson, and I heard it so clear in my head. God was like, think big, start small. The vision that God gives us is always going to be big. It's going to be large. It's going to surpass even our own expectations. It's going to surpass what we think we can do in our own ability. And that is why we need God to accomplish it. However, God is not just interested in using you to build. He's interested in building you. He's interested in making sure that you evolve, making sure that you grow, making sure that you develop into everything He's called you to do. Young minister, you must think big and start small. Habakkuk chapter 2 talks about the fact that we need to make the vision plain. We need to make the vision super clear so that those who see it can run with it. And it is absolutely right. However, after you have made that vision plain, you must understand that there is a building process. And before God can build through you, He must build you. He must build you. He needs to build your character. He needs you to build your endurance. He needs to build your self-esteem. He needs to build you in the place of prayer. God wants to build you. You know what happens when people bypass the building process? They don't last long. Right? They come into ministry and halfway through or a little bit in the journey, they end up with some type of scandal. They end up taking shortcuts, and they end up doing things that really destroy their witness, right? And I want to encourage you that you want to go through the process of God building you. You want to go through the process of God making you and molding you. And so even though God is giving you a vision, even though He's giving you an assignment, even though He's giving you something that you yourself are like, wow, God, this is big. This is bigger than me. Absolutely, it's bigger than you. That's why God gave it to you, so that you have to rely and depend on God in order to accomplish it. However, where you start today, right? Your starting point may not be as grand as where you're going. That vision that I saw in my dream, that vision that the prophet spoke over me, that vision that I just know in my heart and my soul that I am going to accomplish one day, that vision is not going anywhere. However, today, what has God asked me to do? Where has God placed me today? Now, the principle, the goal, the assignment is the same. But the way that it is presented and the timing that is presented in, you will see that even though you saw a stadium full of people in your dreams, today God is having you manage 3 people. Even though you saw an entire city in your dreams, today God is having you manage the spiritual climate of your family. Can you steward and be faithful in the little, so that when much comes, you will have the endurance, the capacity, the fortitude to be able to stand strong when the quantity increases. If you cannot manage 2 people, what makes you think you'll be able to manage 2,000 people? God doesn't just want to build through you. He wants to build you. Will you allow God to build your character? Will you allow God to build your endurance? Will you allow God to build you even in your knowledge, the things that you know? The fact is that many people need to go through seasons of trial and error, even seasons where they fail and they have to get back up and realize, okay, what did I mess up on? People have to go through that before they actually achieve and they actually become everything that God has called them to. We don't achieve success overnight. It takes a process. And so, dear young minister, you must think big. Do not ever let your vision be small. The goal should be big. It should be bigger than you so that you know that I need God to accomplish this. If you can do it in your own ability, in your own understanding, by your own strength, I guarantee you, you're not dreaming big enough. However, you must not be too prideful to start small. What does it mean to start small? When God gives you a vision, it's for an appointed time. But until you get to that appointed time, can you see that vision in front of you and still steward the season that God has put you in the present time? That vision is coming. That vision, nobody can touch it. Nobody can destroy it. Nobody can take it away from you. However, right now, God has called you to be a good steward of the classroom that he's put you in. Don't worry, the stadium is coming, but can you steward the classroom? Don't worry, the blogs and the newspaper fashion articles are coming, but can you steward what it looks like to be a fashion designer in your small circle of influence? I guarantee you that if you will allow this assignment that God has called you to, if you will allow it to grow organically and not try to rush the process, you will realize that you are better off because you endured process than you would have been if you skipped process. I want us to look at the story of Joseph. He had a vision as a teenager that his family would bow down to him. He had this dream that his family would bow down to him, and he saw it multiple times actually, and he told his siblings and he told his parents, and they were a bit confused about the dream. His parents were like, what is going on? And his siblings were like, who do you think you are? You're literally the youngest, right? And it just so happened that Joseph, in the journey of having this dream, in the process of having this dream, he went through a season that really challenged whether this dream would ever come to pass. Right? He was sold into slavery. And so even though he had a dream that he would be in the palace, he ended up in Potiphar's house. He ended up being a steward over the finances and the assets of Potiphar. Right? And I think that many of us, if we were in that situation, would we be humble enough to say that even though I saw myself in a palace, right now I'm a nobody in somebody's house, pretty much doing PA work, okay? Pretty much doing assistant work, right? Would we be able to steward that season and say, I'm still going to show up and be excellent. I'm still going to show up and I'm not going to have an attitude every day. I'm still going to show up and I'm not going to talk about how my siblings betrayed me. I'm not going to, I went through a traumatic situation, but that's not going to be the focus of my day. That's not going to be the focus of my existence. I was sold and I was betrayed and I was neglected by my family. But what does it look like to say, even though that happened, I believe that the God who brought me here for a reason. How can I grow here? How can I develop here? How can I evolve here? Is that our mentality? Is that our mentality? Is that the way we think? Dear young minister, I guarantee you that if you will be a good steward of where you are today, it'll be the foundation of where God is taking you tomorrow. I want us to see this word in scripture, right? Zechariah chapter 4, from verse 8, it says, "Then another message came to me from the Lord. Zerubbabel is the one who laid the foundation of the temple, and he will complete it. Then you will know that the Lord of heaven's armies has sent me. Do not despise the small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin, to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel's hands." Dear young minister, I want to remind you not to despise the days of small beginnings. Don't despise when only 10 people are showing up. You should take a picture of it so that people can see the faithfulness of God when that number increases. Don't despise when you only have a few people on the Instagram live. You should record it. You should document it so that you can see yourself grow and evolve, even as a minister, even as somebody who is called by God. You can see yourself become even the person that God has called you to be. Don't despise the days where you are only able to write a few pages and call it a short story or call it a short book, because what is happening is that you're building capacity even in your writing skills, and God is giving you the wisdom and the tools that you need in order to write full-blown novels, in order to write full-blown manuals that people will take and they will learn and grow from. Please do not despise the day of small beginnings. There's so many benefits in starting small. There's so many benefits to starting with a small group of people. There's so many benefits to starting with just a few friends. There's so many benefits to just saying, okay, what if we can just manage to do this with 10 people or 15 people? I don't want you to despise the days of small beginnings. When it comes to thinking big, the vision that God gave you is always going to be at the forefront of your mind. Okay. Your why is going to be at the forefront of your mind, because that doesn't change. Whether you have 2 people or 2,000 people, your why should not change. The assignment should not change. Whether you have 2 people or 2,000 people, what God is asking you to do should not change. If you find yourself, right, showing up better when there is more people, when more people are in attendance, you need to go check your heart. If you find yourself showing up, giving 100% just because more people are in attendance, you need to check your heart. Listen, you should be operating at 100% whether one person is in attendance or whether 100 people are in attendance. If you are constantly controlled, if your excellence is controlled by whether people showed up or not, you need to go check your heart, because what will begin to happen is that you'll begin to move because people tell you to move and not because God is speaking. Like I've said before, we define success not by whether people applaud us, not by whether people cheer us on, not by whether people approve of us. We define success by obedience. And so if God is asking you to do something, you are working as unto the Lord and not as unto men. So if only one person shows up, if God sent you to do this elaborate thing only for one person, it is still worth it. I am still going to show up with 110%. One thing that I always try to keep in the back of my mind is that I live for an audience of one. I live for an audience of one. I do not try to impress people. If people are blessed in the process, glory be to God. But if they happen not to show up, if they happen not to care, if they happen not to be interested, that is none of my business. My assignment is to glorify God and God alone. My assignment is to honor God and God alone. My assignment is to be submitted to the instruction of God and God alone. And so you must show up and give your best, whether one person shows up or whether 100 people show up. You give your best every single time. And if you find it hard to do that, you need to go sit with God and check your heart, because something is wrong. Something is wrong. So what are the benefits of starting small? What are the benefits of starting small? Number one, when you start small, you are able to master your systems, your culture, and excellence, okay? You're able to master the things that really make the foundation of what God has called you to do. Right? Every time God gives you an assignment, when he gives you an instruction, he is calling you for a reason. You need to sit in the presence of God and understand that reason. Once you have your why, once you have your reason, what that reason will do is that it will shape your culture. It will shape the systems that you put in place. It will shape how you do what you do. And that is going to be consistent no matter how many people are in attendance, no matter how big or how small the assignment is. You yourself must be able to say that I will always be true to the why. Your why will always be consistent. And so when you start small, it gives you the opportunity to master that why. It gives you the opportunity to say, this is why I do what I do. And everything that I do will lead back to this why. Okay. And so down to the culture of what God is calling you to do, whether it be an organization, whether it be a ministry, whether it be a just some type of event, no matter what it is, right? Your why is going to be the backbone of the ministry, and it will always be the backbone, whether it's a small event, whether it's a large event, whether it's it's catering to 10 people, whether it's catering to 100,000 people. It will always be the backbone of the ministry. When you start small, it will allow you to focus on that why and to build a solid foundation. Because one thing that people don't always understand is that when you build something, everything that is added after you build will take on the shape of what you initially built. So when your foundation, if your foundation is not secure, everything that is added after that will be on a shaky foundation. And so what you will find is that when an organization doesn't have a clear value system, right, you will realize that, when people come in, they just keep on adding their own values. Before you know it, it's not clear why we exist, because from the jump, the value system was not intact. The value system was not established, right? And so I want you to fully understand that when you start small, it gives you the chance to focus on the foundation, which is your why, right? Jesus always gives us a why. He gives us a why. He gives us a why. It is up to you as the minister to go and sit in the presence of God and ask him, Father, what are you sending me to do? Why are you sending me to do it? When you start small, you're able to understand the needs of the people that you're serving. One of the things I realized when I was building, and I didn't really even realize it in the moment, but over time, God began to open my eyes to some things. And one of the things that I saw was that it was easier for me to have one-on-one time with people when there was just a few people. I think when Haven started, we were like 20 people. And so I got to check in on people one-on-one. I got to pray for people. I easily remembered everybody's name. I was praying for people, right? I was able to pour into people on a one-on-one basis, right? And I think there's a blessing in that, because what is happening is that I get to understand the needs of the people. Now, these people are probably a sample size of the larger, right, assignment. But if I can understand this sample size, it will give me the opportunity to also be able to build systems that serve this sample size, right? And so I got to realize, okay, this is what people are struggling with. This is what college students really need. Even though I was a college student, sometimes what you need, right, is not necessarily a good indication of what the majority of people need. And so I got to realize, okay, this is what most people are asking God for. This is what people need to understand about God. This is what people are confused about when it comes to their faith, right? This is what people need help with when it comes to prayer. I realized that I grew up in a system that literally I was taught how to pray, because whether you liked it or not, you were going to lead prayer. You were going to pray every single moment you got the chance. Like, I was taught to lead prayer at a very young age, and I was taught how to pray. Now, when I got to college and I began talking to people, I didn't realize how scary it was for some people to lead prayer. I didn't realize how hard it was for people to pray, because they were so used to receiving prayer, but they themselves did not feel like they were adequate or sufficient enough in the presence of God to pray, right? And so there were things that I was able to learn and understand just by reason of being connected so closely with the people I was serving. The only reason I could do it like that was because we were small. was because I I didn't ignore the fact that, okay, I have a small group right now, and it's, the vision that God gave me is much larger than this, right? But I'm not going to discount this group. You know what? Honestly, I'm going to be very honest and say that I don't think I could have handled more than those 20 people at that moment. I don't think I could have handled more than them. I think I needed that training season. I needed the training wheels. I needed to be able to figure out what I was doing with a sample size. And I did not need a large organization at that time, right? And so I thank God for the season of just hiding me and hiding the ministry and allowing us to be a people who just were cool with each other. We were friends, right? We got along with each other, and there wasn't any, we weren't in the limelight at all. And there was something to be said about just being able to grow in that kind of environment where there was less pressure. Oh my gosh, there was less pressure. And we could just learn and mess up and get up again and learn and mess up and get up again. There is such a blessing in starting small. And if I could do it again, I would have even locked in on it. I would have been so intentional about even the things that I practiced, the things that I experimented with, even as a smaller organization. Yeah. Number 3. And this is probably the most important one. I mentioned it earlier, but when you start small, you are able to be built. I can't tell you how God molded me, pruned me, shaped me in the building process. Like, yes, I was building, but I was building at a slow enough rate that I too could be built. He taught me how to speak to people, how to communicate with people, how to love people who are unlovable. He taught me how to manage multiple personalities, right? How to lead people, not the way I felt comfortable leading, but the way they needed to be led. He taught me what it looked like to be a servant leader, right? Not just by title, because sometimes the title looks really good, but by actual demonstration, right? He taught me how to forgive quickly and not to allow malice or bitterness to stay inside of me. He taught me so much when God started small with me, when he allowed me to start with this group of people who did not necessarily have it all figured out, when he allowed me to start with this group of people who allowed me to figure my life out, what he did was he gave me space to grow. He gave me space to grow. And so, no, we weren't as big as the other organizations. No, we weren't as grand as the other ministries. No, we didn't have as much financial support as the other ministries. We didn't have even the mentorship and advising that the other ministries on campus had. We didn't have it, right? However, God gave us he gave us what we needed in order to be what he needed us to be at the moment. And he gave us enough fuel and enough resources and enough he gave us enough wisdom to grow in an organic way. We did not grow because we had extra fertilizer, right? No. We grew through process. We grew through obedience. We grew because we messed up and we dusted ourselves off and we didn't stay down, but we got back up and we say, next time we'll do better. Next time we'll learn from our mistakes. Next time we'll grow better. Next time we'll understand more about what God is doing in this season, and we won't move in our own understanding. Next time we will make sure that even if we're making a mistake, it's not the same mistake because we're learning and we're evolving. And that was the beauty of starting small. Do not despise the days of small beginnings, for God rejoices to see the work begin. And I just feel in my heart that some of you guys started something and you just didn't get the response that you thought you were going to get. People weren't really applauding you the way that you thought they were going to. You started something and it was almost like a high, right? So it was really cool for a few weeks, but then it died. And I want to encourage you to go back to it. I want to encourage you not to give up on it. I want to encourage you that even if people are not excited about it, that God is building you. And because God is building you, that fact alone should be the reason why you continue to press in. That fact alone should be the reason why you don't give up. That particular fact alone should be the reason why you do not stop that assignment, that God is building you. He is teaching you. He is molding you. He is giving you understanding. He's giving you wisdom. He's creating a leader out of you. If you will stay consistent, if you will allow yourself to be built, if you will think big, keep the why as the center, because that is God-given. That one never changes. No matter how big or small the instruction is, the assignment is, the why never changes. And continue to focus on the one who called you. Before you know it, you will see that as God is building you and he's using you to build, that which seems small in the beginning will become a great harvest, a great, great harvest. So as some of you may know, in 2014, I started a campus fellowship as a freshman in college called Haven. And when I started, I knew very little about ministry. I was very green. And I just knew that I heard God and I had a heart to see people know God. I've always had a heart from high school. I talked about it in my first few episodes where I was leading people in Fellowship of Christian Athletes as the captain of the tennis team. I moved on to college and I just saw people who grew up in church, but they didn't really have a personal relationship with God. And I had just been saved 2 years prior to that. And so I wanted to show people that, hey, you can be a college student and still love God. You don't have to completely let go of your values and your morals just because you're in college. And I wanted to teach them that loving God was the best place to be, like the safest place to be is in the presence of God. And so we began to have Bible studies. And the very first meeting, about 20 people came. And then over the years, maybe the first 2 years, I was between 20 and 30 people. It was a pretty small fellowship. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of resources. I remember I would go to I had the instruction from God that part of the pillars of this ministry is going to be fellowship. And so it was called Haven Student Fellowship. And so every meeting there was something, we would always eat something, whether it was brownies or cookies, or if it was a meal that we could make, we would figure it out. And so there were times when we would literally, or I would go and I would use my dining dollars, so we called it Bevo Bucks, and I would, figure out something with my Bevo Bucks to feed 20 people. And there were times when me and my roommates would go to HEB and make pasta or get brownie mix and some eggs and just figure out something to feed the people with. And it was a really humbling season. And God literally allowed us to start small and really just figure out this thing called ministry. And I didn't realize it back then, but the more I think about that season, I realized that starting small was a mercy. That the vision that God gave me for Haven in the very beginning was extremely large. And we still haven't even reached 10 years later, I haven't seen that vision yet. We're getting there, but we're not there yet, right? The vision that God gave me for Haven was extremely large. I didn't even think I would still be a part of it by the time that vision came to pass. We will see, but God gave me such a clear revelation of what Haven was supposed to be. And I just felt like maybe God was going to, use me while I was in college, and then I'll pass it on to the next group of people. And, they would take it to that vision. And I was completely okay with that. I just knew that in that moment, I did not feel equipped to do what God was asking me to do. And so I was grateful to be able to serve, 20 people. I was grateful to be able to serve, just a few, like a couple tens, of people. I wasn't necessarily hungry to be the biggest, organization on campus, right? I was very, very content. Now, I remember, there would be times where we would have events, in that second year of ministry. There would be times where we would do things, and people would, it just happened to be at the same time as like another event, like maybe ASO was having an event, or NESB or BBSA was having an event, and people wouldn't come to the Haven event. They would go to the other event, right? And I felt kind of bad because I was like, God, you told me to do this. Why is it that nobody is showing up? And it was in that moment that God began to just give me the revelation that it's okay. We don't do things for people to show up. We do things because God is my instructor. And so if he tells you to do it, you do it, right? And there's multiple reasons why God could tell you to do something. It could be so that you can learn. It could be so that you can even mess up and try again. It could be so that you can actually discover what it looks like to be excellent, even without having the pressure of people. Right? What does it look like to be excellent for God and not just to be excellent for people, what you think people consider excellent, right? There are so many things that God taught me in those moments when people did not show up or when the attendance was so low. And I have to encourage you as a young minister that it is okay to start small. It is okay for you to have a small group of people that you pour into. It is okay if you are only speaking to one person and encouraging one person. It's okay if God gave you a vision that is large, right? Large, grand. And right now he has you literally ministering to your siblings as the oldest child or even as the youngest, right? It is okay. It is okay. You are still called. You are still anointed, but you must be content and you must be content and understand that where God has you in this season, he is building you. He is building you and he is molding you and pruning you into the person that can actually handle the vision that is grand. Think big. Never forget your why, because your why is the foundation of what you do. Your why will never change whether you have 2 people or 2,000 people. Your why is consistent. Okay. When you are building, remember your why, because your why is God-given. Okay. And your why is what will keep you grounded when people are like, you should do this. You should do that. You should try this. Your why will remind you, no. This is why God sent me. This is who God sent me to. And so although you have a good idea, I am not sent to that. I am not called to that. Think big, start small. Okay. When you think big, your why is your focus. When you start small, you are not moved by what other people are doing. You are moved by what God is calling you to do, right? You live for an audience of one. A lot of people ask me, how do I know whether it's time to do something, right? I have a vision, but I'm not really sure whether I should go forth and do it right now or whether I should do it later or whether, is it for now? Is it for an appointment? Whatever. Is it for an appointed time? And my response is always, okay, when God gives you an instruction, and he gives you vision, he always provides provision. If you see in that moment that provision is not there, you need to readjust and say, God, have you really called me to this in this time? But the moment that provision is provided, even if it's not the provision that you think that is enough, right? The moment that you have provision, all of a sudden a space opens up and it can only accommodate 10 people. My dear, fill that 10 seater. Feel it. Okay. All of a sudden you're able to meet on this particular day, and that's the only day that's available. I need you to meet on that day. When there's provision, are you taking advantage of the provision, or are you so upset that the provision is not as grand as the vision that you saw that you discount where God has you in now? Can you be faithful in a little? Because those who are faithful in a little will be faithful in much. But if you discount where God has you in now, if you say, this is not really the vision I saw, if you do not take the time that God is giving you to grow, to evolve, to develop, then you will miss God in the process of being so prideful that you are not humble enough to say, if God has called me here, I'm going to make the most out of out of this position. I'm going to make the most out of this situation. If God has called me here, I'm going to do my best here. Think big, start small. Think big, start small. Think big, but don't be afraid to start small. That is where God will ensure that you grow. That is where God will ensure that you develop. That's where you're able to see things clearly. That's where you're able to build systems that actually last. That's when you're able to learn. That's when you're able to evolve. That's when you're able to understand things even at a greater capacity. Think big, start small, and see how God empowers you as you trust him in the process. People that last in ministry went through process. If you ever see somebody that is here today, gone tomorrow as a minister, they are really successful today, and tomorrow they just, something happened. They no longer have the same level of influence. I want you to understand that more likely than not, they forfeited some part of the process. Okay. Yeah. More likely than not. And I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying if you check their story, there is a part of the process that they didn't go through. And because they didn't go through it, they did not have the tools that they needed in order to sustain where God was taking them. All right. That is it, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Once again, do not forget to like, share, subscribe. God is building you. He's not just building through you, he is building you. So, dear young minister, think big, start small, and do not bypass process. Love you guys. Have a good one. Bye.